Working the graveyard shift at PitStop 24 off I-35 meant embracing silence. No podcasts, no music, just the buzz of the coolers and the occasional hum of a truck rolling by in the distance. I didn't mind. After 3 years on the job, I had come to appreciate the stillness. The night was like a closed book no one dared open, except for guys like me, paid just enough to flip the pages. It was October 11th, 2023. That date sticks with me now like a splinter under the skin. It was a quiet Monday and the sky had been coughing up drizzle since sundown. Traffic had thinned out by midnight. By 2:43 a.m., the only thing moving was the flickering fluorescent light above the ice machine. I was restocking energy drinks when I heard the chime. Not the door chime, a bell, like an old handbell being rung from the far end of the store. I looked up, half expecting some prankster teen, but instead a man was already at the counter. No footsteps, no wet trail, just there. He wore a long brown trench coat soaked to the hem. His black hat dripped quietly onto the counter. I hadn't heard a car. No engine. No headlights flashed across the window blinds. He didn't speak, didn't even look at me, just slowly placed a single item on the counter, a can of dog food. But not any kind we carried. This one had a faded label from a brand that hadn't been on our shelves in years, maybe since the place opened. The barcode was nearly worn off. When I scanned it, the register beeped once, then froze. The screen flickered. Lines of static ran across the monitor before settling on the total. $6.66. I cleared my throat. Bit spooky, huh? The man raised his head. His eyes were cloudy, the color of fogged-over glass. His skin, sallow, stretched too tight over sharp cheekbones, looked brittle. He smelled faintly of mildew and motor oil. Still, he said nothing. I reached for the can again, trying to scan it manually, but it was gone. In its place sat a receipt. No transaction, no register noise, just the receipt. I picked it up. The timestamp read, February 14th, 2024, 2:43 a.m., 4 months into the future. At the bottom, where it usually says paid with Visa or cash, there was a single line, printed in bold, paid in full return expected. I looked up. The man was gone. No door chime, no footsteps, no wet trail, nothing. After the man vanished, I stood frozen behind the counter, staring at the receipt. The register screen had gone black. The hum of the coolers seemed quieter, like the store itself was holding its breath. I flipped the receipt over, hoping for a glitch, a joke, some kind of marketing stunt. But on the back, written in what looked like dried red ink, were 5 words. You saw him too late. My fingers trembled. I slipped the paper into my back pocket and told myself I was just tired. Hallucinations happen. Lack of sleep, bad coffee, flickering lights. It all adds up. But deep down, I knew something had shifted. That night, I slept with the lights on for the first time since I was 10. The next day, I asked my manager, Ryan, if anyone had tampered with the security system. He raised an eyebrow. Cameras were offline from maintenance, he said. Tech guys coming Friday. I wanted to tell him about the man, the dog food, the receipt from the future. But I didn't. I needed proof first. Over the next few nights, I kept a notebook. I logged everything, every car that pulled in, every customer who came through, every sound. I even noted when the clock blinked. Nothing strange happened. Until October 18th, exactly 1 week later, same time, 2:43 a.m. This time, the power didn't flicker. There was no bell, just silence. Thick silence like cotton in my ears. Then I heard it. Not a footstep, not a voice. It was a hissing whisper, like someone speaking through an old pipe. Locker 42. He's still waiting. I spun around. The store was empty. No customer. No sound. But on the counter, without explanation, sat another item. Not a can. Not food. A rusted locker key, tagged with a brittle cardboard label. #042. I picked it up, half expecting it to vanish like before. It didn't. It was ice cold. Real. and it smelled faintly of seawater. That night I didn't sleep. I sat on my floor, key in one hand, notebook in the other, trying to figure out what Locker 42 meant. I Googled the phrase. Most results were junk, a few urban legends. One Reddit post from 2016 caught my eye. Locker 42 at the Greyhound bus station in Wichita Falls. Don't open it. If you do, you take his place. The post had 0 upvotes. The user was deleted. But the comments? All gone. Deleted. Except one. It just said, "He watches you once you hear the whisper." And that's when my phone vibrated. Unknown number. One new message. 243, Wichita Falls, Locker 42. The message blinked on my phone like a warning flare. I stared at the screen. No contact name, just those chilling words. 243, Wichita Falls, Locker 42. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to ignore it, to pretend it was a prank, but every instinct screamed that this was real, that somehow this locker, this place, was connected to the man, the receipt, and whatever haunted the store. I worked the next night, hoping nothing strange would happen. The hours crept by with the usual monotony, but at exactly 2:43 a.m., the store plunged into darkness for a heartbeat. Then the emergency lights buzzed on, casting long shadows. I saw movement in the security monitor, static at first, then flickering images of an old bus station locker room. There, illuminated by a single bare bulb, was a locker marked 42. The image distorted, but I caught a glimpse inside, something wrapped in white cloth, tied tight. Suddenly, the screen went black. The chill in the room deepened. My phone buzzed again. Another message. Open it, or he opens you. My heart pounded as I realized this wasn't just some coincidence. It is Wichita Falls, Locker 42, the unknown he. I needed answers. The next day I called the bus station. My voice shook as I asked about Locker 42. The woman on the other end paused for what felt like an eternity. Then, quietly, she said, "Locker 42 was removed 5 years ago. It was involved in an incident, something people don't talk about." I asked for details. She refused. "Please, just forget it," she said, then hung up. That night I couldn't sleep. The key burned in my pocket. The whispers followed me in the dark. I kept asking myself, who was he? And what did return expected really mean? Suddenly the idea hit me. Maybe this last customer wasn't done with me yet. The night after the call, I found myself pacing the empty aisles of PitStop 24. The usual hum of the coolers felt more like a low growl, a warning I couldn't ignore. Every shadow seemed to stretch longer. Every flicker of the fluorescent lights felt like a heartbeat slowing down. The key was cold in my pocket, an anchor pulling me deeper into the mystery. I didn't know what I was looking for, but something told me I had to face it soon. At exactly 2:43 a.m., the bell above the door chimed softly. I spun around. No one was there. A chill skated down my spine. I looked down and saw a small, folded note on the floor by the counter. I picked it up carefully, my fingers trembling. The note was simple, written in shaky handwriting. "You can't run from him. The locker holds your fate." Suddenly the lights flickered violently and then went out completely, plunging the store into darkness. The emergency lights kicked in, casting a sickly yellow glow. In the corner, near the snack aisle, I saw movement, a figure standing just beyond the reach of the light. I couldn't make out a face, only a silhouette. My breath caught. Then a voice whispered, barely audible, "Time to return what was taken." I felt compelled to follow the voice, as if invisible strings pulled me toward the back of the store where we kept the storage room. The door creaked open with a groan I hadn't heard before. Inside was a wall of lockers for employee use, rusted, old, and dusty. I hesitated before sliding the key into the lock labeled 42. The lock clicked open easily. Inside was nothing but an old, tattered photo. I unfolded it. It showed a group of people, employees from years ago, standing in front of the very same store. Among them, the man from the trench coat, unmistakable despite the grainy quality of the picture. But the strangest thing was the date scribbled on the back. October 11th, 2018. Exactly 5 years ago, I shivered. Was this some kind of curse? A loop? Something waiting for me to finish? The lights flickered again, and the photo slipped from my fingers. When I looked up, the locker was empty, but I could swear I heard footsteps, slowly retreating. After the photo slipped from my hands, the air in the storage room grew heavy thick with something I couldn't name. The footsteps I'd heard seemed to fade down a long, empty hallway that wasn't really there. I backed out, heart hammering, and locked the door behind me. I sat down behind the counter, the cold key still in my pocket. My mind raced. Who was that man? Why did he appear only at 2:43 a.m.? And what did return expected mean? I searched online again, digging deeper into the history of PitStop 24 and the bus station locker. What I found chilled me. 5 years ago, on October 11th, 2018, a young employee named Jack Evans disappeared without a trace. The last place he was seen? This very store working the graveyard shift. The official report said he never showed up to work again. The more I read, the more connections I saw: the man in the photo, the date on the back, even the whispered warnings. It dawned on me. The last customer might not be a customer at all. Maybe he was Jack, or something left behind when Jack vanished. At 2:43 a.m., the exact time the strange events always began, I decided to confront this mystery head-on. I grabbed a flashlight and headed to the bus station, the place from the Reddit post. The night was cold, and the wind whispered like a warning. I found the old locker room, long abandoned and boarded up. The air smelled like rust and decay. I spotted the faded number 42 on a locker door, half hidden behind a broken panel. As I reached for the handle, the flashlight flickered. A cold breath brushed past my neck. I heard a voice, low, desperate, almost pleading. "Return what's mine." The door creaked open on its own. Inside, darkness stretched like a void. And from the shadows, something moved. The locker door creaked open slowly, revealing a pitch-black void inside. My flashlight beam barely cut through the darkness, and a cold, stale breeze drifted out, carrying the faint scent of rust, dust, and something far older. Decay. My heart pounded against my ribs as I cautiously leaned in, eyes straining to see. At first, there was nothing but shadows. Then, as my vision adjusted, I spotted a small, crumpled bundle wrapped in tattered cloth lying on the bottom shelf. Hands trembling, I reached inside and pulled out the bundle. Carefully, I unwrapped it, revealing an old, cracked pocket watch. Its glass face was shattered, and the hands were frozen, forever stopped at 2:43. Engraved on the back was a name etched in fading letters: Jack Evans. A wave of cold ran down my spine as I realized this watch must have belonged to the missing employee, the very same Jack who vanished 5 years ago. Suddenly, the air grew thick and heavy. The flashlight flickered violently, then went out, plunging me into total darkness. Whispers echoed around me, soft but urgent, as if hundreds of voices whispered in unison. "Return what's mine. Return what's mine." I fumbled for my phone in the darkness, my hands shaking uncontrollably. When the light finally came on, my eyes widened in horror. From the shadows, two faint glowing orbs stared back at me, eyes devoid of life but filled with an endless sorrow. A ghostly figure materialized before me, a pale man in a worn, ragged employee uniform. His hollow eyes bore into me with desperation. "It's been so long," he murmured, voice a fragile whisper. "You must help me." Paralyzed with a mix of terror and sympathy, I could only nod. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, voice barely audible. "Return the truth," he said, voice heavy with sorrow. "Find the ledger, the secret they buried to hide the truth. Only then can I rest." Before I could ask any more questions, the figure began to fade, leaving behind a cold emptiness that swallowed the room. My flashlight sputtered back to life, casting trembling light across the empty locker room. I was alone, but now I knew my real task was only just beginning. The ghost's words echoed in my mind as I left the abandoned bus station locker room. Find the ledger, the secret they buried. But where? Back at PitStop 24, I rifled through old storage boxes in the manager's office. Dusty files piled high and forgotten. My flashlight flickered again, casting eerie shadows across the peeling wallpaper. Hours passed, and just as I was about to give up, my hand brushed against a leather-bound book, worn and faded. I pulled it out carefully. It was a ledger, old and yellowed with age. Flipping through its pages, I saw entries for inventory, deliveries, normal stuff. But then I noticed something strange. Several dates were blacked out, erased with heavy ink. On the page marked October 11th, 2018, the date of Jack's disappearance, a chilling note was scribbled in the margin. Employee terminated, incident unresolved. My heart hammered. What kind of incident? Suddenly, the office door slammed shut behind me. I spun around, but no one was there. The temperature dropped sharply. I felt a breath on my neck and a whisper in my ear. You shouldn't be here. I backed toward the door, fumbling with the handle. It wouldn't budge. Panic rising, I turned back to the ledger. My eyes caught another line, almost hidden under a stain. Locker 42, evidence destroyed. My mind raced. Whoever erased those entries wanted to hide something terrible, something connected to Jack's fate. I heard footsteps again, slow and deliberate, coming from the hallway outside the office. I clenched the ledger tightly and whispered to myself, I have to know the truth. The footsteps stopped just outside the door. And then, silence. The silence outside the office door was suffocating. I pressed my ear against the cold wood, trying to catch any sound, but nothing moved. My breath was shallow, heart pounding in the tight cage of my chest. I clutched the ledger like a lifeline, its worn leather covers soft against my trembling fingers. Every second stretched like an eternity. Suddenly, a faint scratching noise began, soft at first, then louder, like nails dragging along metal. I looked around wildly. The old filing cabinet in the corner trembled, the drawers rattling as if pushed by invisible hands. Then the scratching stopped. A heavy silence swallowed the room again. With trembling hands, I turned to the ledger, desperate for answers. Flipping through the pages, I found a handwritten note tucked between two leaves, a message scrawled in hurried script. He watches, always. The truth is buried where no light reaches. Goosebumps rose on my skin. I realized the he was not just the ghostly figure, but something darker, a presence lingering unseen, waiting. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered, plunging the room into darkness once more. From the shadows, a cold voice whispered, You shouldn't have come back. The door creaked, swinging open slowly. A tall figure stood silhouetted in the doorway, face obscured by shadow. I held the ledger tight and whispered, I'm not afraid. The figure stepped forward, and the truth began to unravel. The figure stepped into the dim light, revealing an older man with weary eyes and a face etched by years of guilt. His uniform was faded, but there was something unmistakable about him, a resemblance to the photos I'd seen of Jack Evans. You've come far, he said quietly, but some truths are heavy. I gripped the ledger tighter. What happened to Jack? To you? He sighed deeply, taking a step closer. I was the manager here 5 years ago. Jack was one of our best employees. But that night, something went terribly wrong. He paused, eyes flickering with pain. There was a fire in the back room, started by a faulty wire. Jack tried to save some files that exposed corruption in the company. They wanted to bury the truth, and he paid the price. My heart sank. So, you're Jack? He nodded. Part of me. The others, they never found my body. I'm trapped here, stuck between worlds because the truth was hidden. I opened the ledger to the blacked-out pages. This? Yes, they erased everything to cover up the incident, but it's all recorded here. You have to make it public. I looked into his hollow eyes and nodded slowly. As I promised, his form began to fade, light filling the room. "Thank you," he whispered. "Now I can rest." The room grew still and quiet. Outside, dawn was breaking, and I knew my mission was just beginning. The first light of dawn seeped through the grimy windows of PitStop 24. The store looked ordinary now, but I carried the weight of what I'd learned like a secret flame burning inside me. With the ledger in my hands, I stepped outside and made my way to the nearest newspaper office, determined to expose the truth. The streets were quiet, the world still waking up. Inside the office, the editor listened intently as I explained everything: the fire, the cover-up, Jack's disappearance, and the ghostly encounters. She nodded, her eyes reflecting a mix of skepticism and concern. "Do you have proof?" she asked. I slid the ledger across the desk. She flipped through the pages, her expression shifting from doubt to shock. "This is big," she whispered, "but it could ruin lives." "I know," I said firmly, "but the truth needs to come out, for Jack and for everyone who's been lied to." We agreed to run the story, promising to handle it with care. As the article went to print, I felt a strange calm settle over me. Back at PitStop 24, the store was quiet, peaceful. The air no longer felt heavy. Somewhere deep inside, I knew Jack could finally rest. But the night still held its secrets, and mine was far from over. Days after the explosive article was published, PitStop 24 became a magnet for reporters, curious onlookers, and conspiracy theorists. The once forgotten convenience store was now in the spotlight, and the company was scrambling to control the narrative. The corruption Jack tried to expose was unraveling in public view. But beneath the surface of media frenzy, something darker was awakening. One chilly evening, as I walked past the dimly lit store, a shadow detached itself from the alley. It was tall and formless, moving with an unnatural silence. I stopped dead in my tracks, a cold dread creeping through my veins. The figure didn't advance but lingered, watching me with hollow eyes that seemed to pierce through the night. The hairs on the back of my neck stood up. My breath quickened. Inside PitStop 24, the fluorescent lights flickered erratically, casting twisted shadows that danced across the aisles. The familiar hum of refrigeration units sounded distorted, like a low growl. I felt a whisper in the stale air, faint and urgent. "You shouldn't have disturbed the past." I forced myself to enter the store. Every step echoed louder than usual, amplifying the oppressive silence. The air was thick, charged with an unseen tension. Suddenly, from the far end of the store, a chilling cold swept past me, extinguishing the lights. Darkness swallowed the room whole. From the shadows, a voice echoed, a voice I knew too well, but twisted by pain and anger. The truth was never meant to be found. A chilling realization hit me. Jack's restless spirit had found peace, but the darkness that once consumed this place was far from gone. I clenched my fists and forced my voice steady. "I won't stop. Not now." The last customer wasn't just a ghost story. It was a warning. And I was ready to face whatever shadows lurked in the past, no matter the cost. The days that followed were a blur of restless nights and shadowy encounters. PitStop 24 stood silent during daylight. But once darkness fell, the store felt alive with unseen eyes watching every move. Determined to end this nightmare, I returned to the store one last time, ledger in hand and courage steeled. The air was thick with tension, as if the building itself was holding its breath. I made my way to the back room where the fire had started years ago. The charred walls still whispered secrets, and the lingering scent of smoke clung to the air. Suddenly, a cold gust slammed the door shut behind me. My flashlight flickered wildly, and a familiar figure materialized. A shadow of Jack, but more solid, more at peace. "This ends tonight," he said, his voice steady but tinged with sorrow. I nodded. "We expose everything. No more lies." Together, we revealed the hidden evidence, files proving the company's corruption and cover-up. I promised to share the truth with the world. As dawn broke, Jack's form began to glow softly, light replacing shadow. "Thank you," he whispered. "I can rest now." The store felt lighter, the shadows retreating like a nightmare fading with morning. Walking away, I realized some stories don't end with ghosts but with justice. The last customer had finally left.